Local cases of coronavirus in San Diego County jumped by 20% in the last 24 hours. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Barbara Lee Edwards.
I'm Carlo Cicchetto. Here are tonight's headlines. County health officials today announced 734 cases of coronavirus in San Diego County. That is an increase of 131 since yesterday. But officials continue to stress the real number of cases out there is much higher. There are also now 9 confirmed deaths, an increase of 2. The White House is now projecting between 100,000 and 240,000 U.S. deaths if social distancing is maintained.
Today, county officials said that 4 people on board the Celebrity cruise ship that docked on Monday are confirmed to have the coronavirus. This comes just a day after the county said that no one on board was showing symptoms of having COVID-19. News 8's Nita Enrampour has the story.
Here we are at the B Street Pier. You can see the Celebrity eclipse right here behind me, and a lot has evolved with the details of what's going on this ship and with the passengers who have come off this ship. In fact, one of the passengers did tell us she got a letter around 10 o'clock this morning from the Celebrity eclipse confirming that a passenger did test positive for COVID-19. That letter advises all the passengers that they may have come into contact with the virus and that they need to check their temperature twice a day and they need to stay home. No leaving for work or for school, or do not come into contact with anyone else. That is the letter from the Celebrity eclipse that they just received. Now, while we were out here around 10:30 today, an ambulance came by. We saw that ambulance leave, followed by an announcement made on the ship to those passengers who are still on board. And then around 7 o'clock yesterday morning, we were also here when we saw an ambulance. We saw that ambulance here at the Port of San Diego had to wait for the patient to get through customs before they could take that patient to a hospital. County officials do tell us that patient did in fact test positive for COVID-19. A family member also reaching out to us to let us know their relative is currently being treated and was in the ICU overnight. County officials say that person is not a San Diego resident, but they're not telling us where that patient is from. And many of the passengers we spoke with on the Celebrity eclipse said they felt safer on this ship because they were told there were no cases and no one with any signs or symptoms of COVID-19. But the woman we spoke with yesterday said they did get that email 10 this morning confirming this case, and that again that a letter advises them to check their temperature, check for any cough or any type of symptoms of coronavirus, and they are being told to stay home for 14 days, which is exactly what Michelle Stevens and her husband plan to do.
I would hope that they didn't lie to us. Maybe they didn't have a kid on board, so maybe they thought they got first-hand bronchitis. I'm not really sure. I'm hoping they come out and tell us a little bit more about it. But they were so good to us on the ship. I would have a hard time thinking they lied to us on purpose.
We know that we were safe over there and we were healthy, but now that you're down here, you don't know how is everybody healthy. So we felt that we were like in a bubble on the water, but everybody was healthy. And now that you're down, it's kind of scary.
Now, that second woman who you just heard from said she will also stay in quarantine, but we did see her kids pick her up and her husband right here at the Port of San Diego yesterday. They were just so thrilled to see their parents and glad to be able to take them back home. But of course, that was when they were all told that no one on board had any signs or symptoms. County officials say each person was screened prior to getting off of this ship, and only those who are asymptomatic and without fever were being allowed to leave and head home. The county did announce that after today, any ships who may show up at the San Diego harbor will not be allowed to disembark their passengers or their crew members. If they do show up here, they will only be allowed to get fuel or provisions. And that's the very latest from the B Street Pier. Back to you.
Thanks, Nita. Dozens of sailors aboard the USS Roosevelt have tested for COVID-19, and now the aircraft carrier's captain is pleading with Navy officials for help. News 8's Brandon Lewis is live across from Naval Station North Island with the call for action. Brandon.
Yeah, Carlo, he sent a letter to Navy officials asking them to do more. Currently, some of the sailors are in a Guam gym in a group quarantine situation. He is asking for up to 90% of the sailors to get into isolation to try to figure out who has the coronavirus and get them treated.
We've identified all those folks that they've had contact with, and we're quarantining them as well.
That was the Navy 1 week ago as it downplayed the potential risk of coronavirus on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt. But in a letter obtained by CBS News, the commanding officer says that was impossible. Captain Brett Crozier wrote Navy officials saying, quote, "We are not at war. Sailors do not need to die," unquote. The San Diego-based nuclear carrier is homeported in Coronado. It left back in January with 4,000 sailors on board. Earlier this month, it completed a 5-day port visit in Vietnam. Video shows sailors participating in community projects like performing maintenance at the Agent Orange Center and visiting a charity center in Da Nang. The Navy said it debated whether to allow sailors to go ashore, but at the time there were only 16 confirmed coronavirus cases in Vietnam. The first sailor didn't test positive until 15 days later, so it's unclear how the virus got onto the ship. Meanwhile, the Roosevelt made its way to Guam, where those not showing symptoms were taken to gyms with cots. But now, at least 2 sailors there tested positive. Crozier wrote, quote, "Group quarantine sites are not a solution and are not in accordance with current guidance," unquote. The captain is asking the Navy to isolate 90% of the crew individually and keep just 10% on board for cleaning and essential functions.
The admiral for the Pacific Fleet refused to commit to any numbers, but says they're working to balance the needs of the nuclear warship and its sailors. That includes working with Guam to secure hotel rooms to isolate some sailors and get the ship back to sea in a few weeks.
You know, so the cleaning of the ship is challenging. You identified it. The guidance has been to clean to the standards and in the manner in which CDC describes. It certainly is more challenging, but that's the way forward.
While the admiral wouldn't discuss specific numbers, we know there are at least 35 sailors who have tested positive for coronavirus based on the captain's letter, but the number is likely much higher. The admiral did say that of those sailors who tested positive, none of them are in the hospital and none of them require any sort of intensive care like ventilators. Of course, going to stay on top of the story and bring you the latest developments as they continue to unfold, including what some families have to say. For now, though, we'll go ahead and send things back to you in the studio. Carlo and Barbara Lee.
All right, thanks, Brandon. There are now 734 positive cases of coronavirus in San Diego County that have been confirmed. That's a jump of 131 since last night, and it's the largest single-day increase so far. 9 people have died. 136 people have been hospitalized.
448, or 61%, are between the ages of 20 and 49 years of age, showing that this infection affects all ages.
Officials say that more than 10,000 tests have been done so far, but they also caution that the actual number of cases will climb as testing expands.
Governor Gavin Newsom says more than 25,000 people have applied to volunteer their health services to combat COVID-19. This as he launched a new statewide initiative today aimed at helping people over the age of 65 stay connected while they self-isolate at home. He said some older Californians may need help from neighbors getting essential items, but did note that the state's 211 system can also help.
So if a loved one or a neighbor or a stranger is in need, and they need something more than just nice words and just a check-in, but need specific services, we've partnered now with 211 to provide those services at the local level all throughout the state of California.
To help people deal with loneliness, the governor is also encouraging people to make 5 phone calls and reach out to your neighbors. The president says the country will face a, quote, tough couple of weeks as his task force released the data models used to inform his social distancing guidelines. Skylar Henry has the latest from the White House.
The nation's top health experts warn Americans should prepare for 100,000 or more deaths, though the coronavirus is expected to peak within the next 2 weeks.
We got to brace ourselves. In the next several days to a week or so, we're going to continue to see things go up.
But the president and his advisors say social distancing guidelines can help mitigate that spread.
We're going to see things get better all of a sudden, and it's going to be like a burst of light.
There's no magic bullet. There's no magic vaccine or therapy. It's just behaviors.
Several major U.S. companies have stepped up in recent weeks, producing ventilators, face masks, and other personal protection equipment. But governors from states large and small say they still are unable to secure the medical supplies they need.
It's like being on eBay with 50 other states and now FEMA is bidding on top of the 50.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called on the president to use the Defense Production Act to do more.
Tuesday, both the president and the House Speaker pushed the need for infrastructure spending in the fourth stimulus bill. But a senior official says the White House is focused on implementing the massive Phase 3 economic rescue package for now.
A small business loans program is expected to be up and running by the end of the week, and Americans could begin to see direct payments in the next couple of weeks. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is sending medical supplies and personnel to assist the USS Roosevelt after the captain sent a letter pleading for help, with dozens of sailors testing positive for COVID-19.
We are offloading from the ship the sailors who are infected. We're giving them appropriate treatment ashore.
Esper says safety is his top priority for U.S. service members and their families. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Dozens of local activists found a new way to rally for detained immigrants in Otay Mesa today. The group Otay Mesa Detention Resistance led the Honk for Justice rally outside of the ICE immigrant detention facility. They say the conditions inside are unsafe and those being held are unable to follow social distancing and hygiene guidelines, and they are vulnerable to coronavirus. The group is demanding state and county officials use their emergency powers to close the facility.